Hey everybody, welcome to the show today. We have a fantastic guest that I've been trying to get on the podcast for a long time. And this particular young man, his name is Captain John Landry. I fished with his father, John Landry Sr., for a lot of years down in the Florida Keys. And he started bringing young John when he was about 10 years old. And John was always a heck of an angler. His dad was a great angler. And it's been fun to watch because young John turned into a guide himself, starting in Alaska and then starting his guide service down in the Fort Myers area. And he has developed into a really five-star, very professional, very good fishing guide. And it's been real fun to watch him progress and do that, and also be a real voice in conservation in both Alaska and in Florida. And that is a lot of that is with Captains for Clean Water. We're going to talk about a lot of water quality issues, but we're also going to get his story about how he started guiding, how he made the transition from zero experience in freshwater to guiding in Alaska, and then back to Florida, starting his business and going through so many things, man. He's had the BP oil spill, he's had hurricanes, he's had water quality issues, he's had all kinds of things going on, and still managed to get this business going and do well. And good people attract other good people, and John is one of those good people. So stand by for a great podcast with my friend John Landry.
I'm Captain John Landry, and this is the Tom Rowland podcast.
John Landry. Wow. Man, I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a long time, and I'm really, really happy to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. This is very exciting for me, and glad to be here.
Yeah, well, our history is interesting. We go back because I used to fish with your dad. What age do you think you were coming down and fishing with your dad and I?
And I was trying to think about that, Tom, and I think the first trip I did, I was probably 10 years old. And then, shoot, man, I mean, we used to fish, I used to come down and fish the red bone tournaments, like that sticks out in my head.
Oh, it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun. I remember when you were 10 years old and, we would be fishing for whatever, maybe catch some jacks or whatever. And I got a rod, and, maybe I throw out there and, I'm trying to pole the boat and do everything. And I would just hand, hook a fish and hand it over to you as a 10-year-old, and your dad's like, he doesn't want that. He's not gonna reel in your fish. You have to reel that fish in. I mean, that's how it went from day one. And man, you really developed into a great angler, and it's been fun to see you develop this guide career. Tell me how that started. I mean, you're going to Alaska, you're guiding in Fort Myers. How did all that start for you?
I mean, I always loved to fish, but honestly, I never saw myself being a fishing guide. It started for me. I went to Florida Gulf Coast University, and I got my captain's license out of high school. I just thought it'd be a good opportunity for me to guide through college. I was fortunate. My dad had a boat I could use. I had a lot of friends in the business. I knew I could just get some overflow trips on the weekends, here and there to get me by. And it was really the opportunity I had in Alaska, which was my junior year of college. I went to Alaska that summer, and it really changed my life, Tom. I came back that fall, and I realized that I was going to, whatever I was going to do the rest of the year had to allow me to go to Alaska for the summer. And so, when you start thinking about that, you're like, well, I could be a teacher, that ain't going to work. So I fell into full-time guiding, and it's really because of Alaska. I wanted to be able to make my own schedule and be up there for the summer. So that's after I graduated college, I just kind of fell into it full-time and, bought my own boat. And, there's a big change when you go from, just a couple trips on your dad's boat here and there to get by to, I'm going to put bread on my table, and from guiding. So that was a big step for me. And I mean, shoot, when I started was the BP oil spill,
Really?
that was my first year of full-time guiding. And looking back at the last, 13 years I've been doing it. I mean, I've had the BP oil still, had the red tide, the freshwater releases of 2014, COVID, Hurricane Ian. It's pretty tough climate
Well,
to start a guide
I
business.
tell you what, if you can make it through all of that, you're doing well. What has been the secret to making it in there? Have you been really? I mean, you got great mentorship from your dad, who's seen a lot of different guides in the industry, both do very well and make mistakes and other things. But I would imagine that keeping your bills as low as possible as you're starting is super important. But and then when you have all of these different events that are going on, what has been the secret to being able to stay in business during all of these bad times?
I mean, like you said, definitely being smart about how you spend your money. And then really just, building and maintaining relationships with, like my good clients. I mean, I think that has been my saving grace. Like I got guys that'll, come down and, like last year, like my tarpon season didn't skip a beat. I got guys staying in places that, like there's construction outside and the first floor of the hotel is still wrecked from the storm, but like they don't care, like they'll still come down to fish with me. I think that, just the relationships that I've been able to build has carried me through some hard times.
Yeah, that is that's exactly, we have a very similar story in that. Like I started my guide career because I went to Yellowstone and I had a similar kind of experience to you. Like I came back and I was like, my life has changed and I'm going to
Yeah.
do that every summer. And if it's not that, I'm going to figure out something else to do. And
Yep.
actually, what I thought I was going to do was go to Alaska, and that was my next step. And you would probably get a kick out of this. I thought I was going to work in a cannery. I thought, like, that's what I heard. Like back then, it was before the internet and before I knew many people. And I just heard you could go up there and get a job in a cannery. So I was like, well, that sounds good. I'm going to go up there. My dad's listening to this plan. And he's like, huh, you don't have a car. You don't know anyone. You don't even know where you're going up there. And he very artfully passed me over an opportunity to go to a guide school in Jackson, Wyoming. It was like, would you rather do this instead of maybe going to Alaska? Which was his way of saying, this sounds like a terrible idea. But
Yep.
yeah, that's how I ended up doing that too. And then,
You owe your dad a big thank you for
oh,
that, Tom.
I certainly do, because the cannery thing probably would not have gone very well. I can't
Yeah, it sure
imagine that.
doesn't seem like that much fun.
No, it really doesn't. But I was young and dumb, and that's what a dad's good for. They
Yeah.
they kind of steer you in the right direction without telling you that you're being really stupid. It's kind
Yep.
of like a very very careful kind of change of direction, right? Like,
Yep.
and it worked, and
Yep.
it turned out great. But when doing that kind of was a similar thing of like, that's what I want to do. I found the saltwater later. Of course, you knew the saltwater first, and I
Yep.
always say that when you raise your kids around the ocean, they want to go to the mountains, and when you raise your kids around the mountain, they want to go to the ocean. So you were drawn to Alaska.
Very true.
How did you get that first experience, that first opportunity to work up there?
I owe my opportunity up there to Andrew Bostic,
Oh
who
yeah, of
you know
course.
well. Yeah, I was fishing with Andrew and my dad down in the Everglades. Must have been the fall of 2010, and Andrew had just got back from a trip up there to Bristol Bay, and he was at another lodge, Bristol Bay Lodge. He was up there with a client doing like a hosted trip, and it was his first trip to the area, first trip to that lodge, and he's like, dude, I think this is something that you would absolutely love. If I was your age, John, I'd be all over it. That's all I needed to hear. And Andrew knew a guy that guided in the park at the time. His name was Todd Hadley. Todd grew up with the owner of the lodge. Well, at the time, he was the manager. Now he's the owner. So Andrew put me in touch with John Perry. And then, a phone interview with some awkward questions led to me getting the job. And this coming summer will be 14 years.
Wow. So now you're the veteran, but when you're going up there to start, you have zero
Yep.
experience other than saltwater experience, of course, and you've been around boats your entire life, and you were probably a really good hand. You're a big, strong kid, right, going up there. But
Yep.
when you enter into a situation like that, no experience, everything's new. What is that like? What kind of mindset do you need to have? What kind of what do you how do you have success when you get there with no experience like that?
Uh, I think just recognizing that you have no experience, that like you aren't a great fisherman in that environment. It's new to you. And I think just truly recognizing that, and then, like listening to what others have to say, and like, asking questions, and just, being humble and truly, just kind of being a sponge for everything you can take in. And then that's exactly what I did. Because I mean, Tom, I knew absolutely nothing. I mean, like prior to getting the job and talking to Andrew, until I did a little Google search on the lodge and the fishery, I was under the assumption that salmon was one fish. If you went out and you caught a salmon, like that's a salmon. I didn't realize there was five kinds. I mean, I was about as green as you could be, for sure. But I was fortunate, man. I mean, the guys that I learned under, and like when I came into the lodge, they really took me under their wing. They showed me what I needed to know, what I didn't need to know, and kind of the whole keep it simple, stupid mentality. And I was given a lot of time to get out on the river that first year and just kind of learn the river, and very blessed for that opportunity and how I was brought into the fishery, for
Yeah.
sure.
Were you running jet boats or drift boats or rafts, or what were you learning the river on?
Uh, my first year, I was running a prop boat, little 18 low, and then now I run a jet boat. I do the trout trips up to a section of the river we call the braids. But yeah, starting out, it was fish about 6 miles above the lodge and 2 miles below it, and pretty simple body of water
Yeah.
to get your feet wet.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's so cool to have that opportunity, and then to capitalize on it. And now you've been doing it for 14 years. All right. So one of the things that we do on the podcast before we get too far along with the conversation is to go on the hot seat. So I got a series of questions. They're kind of either or what you prefer. And it's kind of rapid fire style, and
Yep.
it allows the audience to get to know you a little bit better, and also we loosen up, and maybe there's something even funny in here that we can talk about even further. So you ready to go?
Lay it on me, Tom.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Coffee, tea, or energy drink?
Coffee.
Mountains, beaches for vacation. Mountains or beaches for vacation.
Mountains.
Favorite fishing movie or TV show?
Saltwater experience.
Boom!
Hands down.
You brown noser. Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics?
Summer Olympics.
Favorite pro wrestler of all time?
Stone Cold Steve Austin,
There
baby.
you go. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Country, classic rock or rap?
Only had to listen one.
Well, whatever.
I go rap.
Rap? Okay. Who's your favorite right now?
Juice World.
Okay.
Juice World, Tom?
Yeah, I do. I have kids, and I also have a workout group that people bring in all different kinds of music. So
Oh yeah.
we have rap day, we have country day, and but typically it's classic rock. All right, best catch in your career?
Oof, my wife.
Hey, brown noser,
wife.
you're just keeping that brown nose going. Text or calls?
Text.
A movie that makes you laugh?
Super Troopers.
Last book you remember reading, or your favorite book?
The last book I remember reading was the history of the Lake Mansfield Trout Club.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that good?
It was great. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. East Coast or West Coast? Which I guess would include Alaska.
I'd have to go West Coast.
Okay. East Coast or West Coast of Florida?
West Coast.
Early fishing memory or trip that made you a lifetime angler?
Ooh, I got so many of those. I would have to say catching my first tarpon.
Nice. Who'd you do that
Yep.
with?
The first one I did all by myself was with my dad and with Andrew in Captiva Pass.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, Spinning rod, conventional or fly rod?
For me personally, fly rod.
Okay. Inshore or offshore?
Depends where we're at, Tom.
You got
Where
to
are we
pick
at?
one. You got to pick
Yeah,
one. Which do you prefer?
inshore.
Okay. River, lake, or backcountry?
Man, these are tough.
I know.
Uh,
Can't decide. Would you have a reptile as a pet?
Negative.
Would you have a bird as a pet?
No.
One of your favorite bands besides Juice World?
My favorite bands besides Juice World. Mm, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Instagram or Twitter?
Instagram.
One thing you're afraid of?
Failing.
Gamakatsu, TMCO owner, or Mustad?
Mustad.
Office, Friends, or Parks and Rec?
Office.
One piece of technology you rely on heavily other than your phone?
My camera.
Nice. Favorite fish?
Tarpon.
Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
Audio, paper, or Kindle for books?
Paper.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Alaska or Florida?
Alaska.
One piece of advice that has served you well?
Uh, Live life on your own terms.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who told you that?
My dad kind of instilled that into me at a young age. Basically, like, life's, it's yours for the taking. It's up to you to carve out a lifestyle that you want, and everything's possible. So I owe that to my old man.
Yeah. Well, you got a good old man. He was always one of my favorite customers, and it's been really cool to see you guys, maintain your relationship over these years. And you were telling me when we ran into one another at the Captains for Clean Water event that he goes up to Alaska with you, or kind of spends a good amount of time up there. What's his program up there?
He's on a every other year program right now, and I mean, he loves coming up there and helping out. Like he'd rather, he has just as much fun staying at the lodge and offering a hand and whatever that may be. Like whether it's preparing meals or doing projects or working on boats as he does, out there fishing. He loves being at the lodge and just being a part of the lodge family and helping get stuff done. So it's definitely great to have him up there, and I cherish that time for sure.
That's awesome. And so the every other year, is that just that's the way he prefers it, or that's what the lodge needs, or how does that work out?
No, that's on his terms. And I mean, honestly, it's the travel. It's a lot of travel for him. Uh, so the every other year is his terms.
Yeah. That's awesome that he does that and you guys do that together. Another thing that I've seen you do, and I just got back from a duck and goose hunt in Saskatchewan, and it was incredible. But one of the things that I've seen you do up there is duck hunt for the sea ducks, the king eider. Tell me about that. Because that's
Hands down,
supposed to be the hardest, most difficult environment to hunt ducks in. I don't know if the birds are hard to hunt, but that's a tough place to hunt ducks, I think. I don't know. Tell me about it, because I've never done it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I really can't imagine a harder, harsher environment to hunt ducks. That's for sure. And I mean, the thing about it is, like, I had never killed a duck in my lifetime. The first duck I ever killed was a king eider. So.
Wow.
I mean, I'm probably the only American aside from a native growing up on St. Paul that can say that. And it was a buddy of mine, Russell Owen, who I guided with, in the summer at fish camp. Sea duck hunting was his passion. That was his tarpon fishing. Like, he was ate up with it, and he was probably the best in the world. He ended up calling me one October. They have a small operation. So one of his guys couldn't make it up, so he called me and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "I need you to come up and guide St. Paul if you'd be interested." And he knows I don't hunt, never killed a duck, da 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 da. But it sounded like a wild experience, and I didn't want to let Russ down, and I just trusted him that he'd be able to show me the ropes. And And that he did. I owe all my success up there to just following his game plan and doing exactly what he told me to do. But man, that was a wild experience. And I did 2 years out there, and hopefully one year go back, to work out, or I can go back and do it again. Uh, yeah, no regrets on that.
Tell me about that hunting. Like, especially for Florida hunters, a lot of people hunt like the Okeechobee area, and
Hmm.
it's typically warm water. You've got alligators, you've got bugs, you've got all kinds of different things, and then move up into the south. You have some cold weather hunting, and you got waders and boats and stuff like that. But walk us through what a king eider hunt looks like.
So king eider hunt would start with you checking the weather hard the night before. That's going to dictate your plan for the next day. So depending on the weather, we usually have three options. You launch from the boat ramp at the south side of the harbor, or you do a beach launch off the leeward side of the island, or you would do a just a shore hunt, where you're hunting from the rocks, waiting for birds to fly by. And then the thing about the little shore hunt, though, is there's no dogs allowed on the island of St. Paul, and that's to protect the seal population. So when you're hunting on land, because the weather's too bad for you to get out in a boat. But so in order to get your birds back, you have to hunt on the windward side of the island. So after you shoot one, the waves wash it into the rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as the new guide on St. Paul, I guess who the Labrador Retriever was, that would be me. And out of everything I did, that was definitely my least favorite. Was when somebody shot a bird and I'd have to go chasing down the slippery rocks. It's just yeah.
What temperatures are you typically?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was a range of probably 12 to 35 degrees, somewhere in there.
Wow,
Yeah.
12 degrees. The waves are crashing all over you, probably, right?
Tom, the worst weather that I was ever out in a boat in was my first day. First day.
Of course.
I swear to God, I remember laying in bed and you could hear just a lot of metal tin roofs on old buildings up there, and you could hear them just beat into the side of the building. And I look over at Russ, I'm like, we're not going hunting. We're not going out now, right? And he's like, oh yeah, it's an east wind. We'll be fine. And Tom, it was literally blowing 40 to 50. All right. we launched the boats, and I don't know if you watched Deadliest Catch, but the time bandit was in the harbor, and they were getting crab pots or doing something. So we pulled over to get a photo opportunity for the guys, and it was just like you see in the show. The flags up front, tattered, the lights are on, it's just sideways, just rain, sleet, just crap blowing everywhere. Pull up next to the boat, and Hillstrand pulls the window down, flicks the cigarette out, and is just gone, right? he sticks his head out and he goes, you guys are fucking nuts, and then slams the window back up. And I'm here like pop, 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 pop. Like I've watched every episode of the show, like on my couch, just like, God, these guys are crazy. And Hillstrand just told me that I'm nuts. So that was a real reality check moment for me, for sure. Yeah.
And were you successful on that day?
I did, yeah. We limited out first day out, yeah.
Dang. And then from that point on, it's been easier than day one.
Easier in the sense of, didn't have the nerves, and, I'd never, shit. I got out with Russ one day before clients came in to just kind of see how to get in and out of the harbor. But, I hadn't made the run to where we were go hunting. And so it was just, getting that comfort zone, getting the first day bugs out of the way. It was easier. Yeah.
Wow. And then, I do notice that you take your dog up there, right? Like you have
not to St. Paul. They don't allow dogs on.
Right.
St.
That's what
Paul,
I was wondering, because you said that, and I had seen your dog on some of the posts and stuff.
Oh yeah, they come up to the fishing lodge for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah.
So, man, and what's a good day king eider hunting? You kill one, or can you get your limit? What's to be expected?
Well, as a non-resident hunter, you're only allowed 4 king eiders for the year.
For the year?
For the year.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. And so basically, if you had good weather and you could get out in a boat hunt, and you were somewhat of a good shot, you should kill a good chunk of your birds in that day.
Wow.
But a big thing too is, if you're only going to shoot 4 birds, you want them all to be primo birds, right? And so a primo bird would be a mature drake king eider. So that, the the best day you could have would be to go out and shoot 4 mature good kings.
Wow. And are you
Yeah.
using decoys or what? How do you get them to you?
Basically just, we would run decoys. I would run, 6 or 7 birds, and it was enough to just kind of pull birds in for, a look, but they're never decoying into the spread. And you're really just, you know, getting in the lane where the birds want to go naturally, right? So you're just setting yourself up for pass shooting, basically. The birds would want to come into the rocky points and the reefs to feed, so you're just able intercepting their flyways.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a cool looking bird. I mean,
good,
it's really one of the
beautiful,
most beautiful ducks. I would say right
beautiful.
up there with like a southern wood duck, with all the colors, and it's a really incredible bird. I don't know if I want
Beautiful.
to do it bad enough to go in those conditions, but maybe one day I'll give it a shot for.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like you got to be there kind of at the right time of the year and the right day, and almost have a special trip just for those. The people that were coming up there, were they like very serious duck hunters that were trying to get that last species, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say just about all of them. I
Mm,
mean, die-hard duck hunters, every single one of them. Yeah, usually it was the last bird in their quest to shoot every duck you can shoot in North America, and
right.
just because of the where you had to go to have a good chance of getting it done, the king eider was last on that list. And so, here I am. Like, I've never killed a duck, and one of the hardest things for me, Tom, was just just shooting the shit with the guys, like talking duck hunting, like, I don't duck hunt, and just still trying to make, like show off, like I'm confident, like I'm capable in what I'm going to do, without telling them that, like, I've never killed a duck before. But
How do you do that?
you just, you don't nail yourself down to any specifics, kind of go with the flow. Like, I remember guys being like, "Well, Landry, you do a lot of duck hunting down in Florida." And like, "Well, not as much as I like to, Like,
What a
"Oh,
great
Landry,
answer.
what do you hunt down there?" "Oh, we get a little bit of everything, and then let them fill it in. Like, "Oh, you get bluebills sometimes. So just, yeah, don't nail yourself down to any specifics and go with the flow. But I mean, as a guide, like, you have to have confidence, and you can't let your clients know that, like you've never done this before, no
Right.
matter what that is.
Right. I mean, I'm having flashes of my first guided trip ever, uh, and I got lost on the way to the river. I didn't even know how to get there, but I mean, they were like, "So you've been guiding long?" "Oh yeah, long time."
Long
Like
time.
long time for me. Like, you're
Yeah,
not lying.
you're not
It's. I mean,
lying.
I've been here for 2 weeks, and that's the
Yep.
longest I've been away from home ever in my whole
Yep.
life. So,
Yep.
long time. Yeah.
Long time.
But those first trips are, whew, that's tough. I was so nervous. I think I peed all over myself too when I went to the bathroom, and my boss is like, bangs on the door like, "Okay, your clients are here." You try to hurry up, and it's like, "Oh man," you like, not cool. Like, I just
Not
think I
cool.
peed all over my khaki pants here. This is not good. And you're
Yep.
walking out to meet these guys, and I remember they were so hungover. I still have a picture of the first. I have a picture of the guy I took, and he was so hungover that they both fell asleep in the truck. And so I'm going down to the river, and I get to this Y, and one way led to the Green River, and the other way led to the Salt River, and I couldn't remember which way I went, and I had to turn around, and they were both asleep, and they didn't even notice. But it
Yep.
was it was I mean, I was as green as you were
Yep.
when you were talking about going to Alaska for the first time. Um, Man, good times though. Somehow you make it through that, and
Yeah, and I mean, I think anytime where you put yourself in a position, where you allow yourself to be uncomfortable, and then you're able to get the job done, it's a very rewarding experience. Like, that's, I mean, like that first day on St. Paul, man, I don't know if I've ever felt more alive and more focused in what I was doing than that day, for sure.
yeah, isn't that something? And then, but the funny thing is like now you're 14 years into it, you still love it, you still, I don't know, do you have the same attitude of trying to listen and learn as much as you possibly can from everybody you possibly can learn from, or have you kind of, I don't know, how does that change for you?
I mean, in terms of Alaska fishing,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's definitely changed. Now I definitely tune in and tune out who I want to, who I'm really listening to as opposed to just making conversation. But I mean, yeah, I mean, now this will be year 14. I remember my first year on the river and like seeing guys on the river and hearing stories about them. Like, oh, that's Jeff. You know, he's been on the river for 8 years. You know, you think like, oh wow, guy's a grandpa. You know, like there's Bill. He's been on for 15. You know, for 14, 15 years. Like, oh my God, legend. Like now, you know, like I'm one of the oldest guides on the river. You know, it's just to like make that, you know, come full circle with it is been a cool experience.
It is, and also you've got a lot of years under your belt back home, right?
Yep.
In Fort Myers. And so, what's your program when you're in the saltwater?
My program in the saltwater, like my bread and butter is tarpon fishing. Kind of over the last couple of years, just changed my business model a little bit where I don't, I'm not trying to fish hard every month. Now I do basically yeah, I fish March through first week of June here, tarpon fishing. I'm up in Alaska till the end of September. And then I fish, a couple of my really good clients October through the first 2 weeks of November. And then I really kind of, pull the reins back and take time for me and my wife to travel and do things that we want to do for, that December, January, February. And that's been one of the best decisions I've made in my guiding career.
Yeah.
It's very important to maintain, those relationships outside of fishing. And as well as anybody, man, it's hard to grind, like day in, day out, still maintain a healthy relationship with your wife or your kids. It's
Well, it is that is a very mature way to think of it, and many guides um, lose track of that. And
Yep,
when you're so passionate about what you're doing, you can sometimes easily take for granted some of the things that are the best things that you have in your life, like your family and your wife and your
yep,
kids and things like that. And you're working so hard for your family, but somewhere along the line you kind of forgot that they also need you. And
yep.
it's easy to do. And unfortunately there are a lot of guides that you can learn from that have not been successful in that, outside of their fishing. They're some of the best
Yeah,
fishermen ever, but
yep.
can't keep their family together.
Yeah, and like you brought up earlier, like you learn from, growing up, like you watch people that you see do it the right way, and then you see guys do it the wrong way, and like I remember seeing guys, just for example, like with their relationship, like boom, they lose their wife, they lose their family, and like they attribute it to how much they work or how much they guide. So like, it's a little mental note, like when I get down the road, I go and focus on my family and, avoid the burnout and just try and make it something that I'm able to do for a long time. And I'm happy doing what I love. I mean, you talk to a lot of guides and like, they really aren't that happy,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of times it's a position they put themselves in, they get over leveraged, and they get in a bad spot financially and they have to fish a lot, fish bad weather, fish clients they don't want to fish, it's so I've just been fortunate to kind of position myself where I am now.
And what about the change of seasons, the change of locations? How much do you think that keeps you kind of engaged? And at this point in your career, do you think that if the fishing would allow for 365 days in Alaska, uh, and you could choose between 365 up there where you're fishing all the time and 365 in Florida, would you still want to move around and do two different seasons?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would. Yeah, even as much as I love Alaska, 365, you'd still have, you'd still have some phases of burnout, getting tired of scenery, which is crazy to say, but I
Yeah.
mean, that's reality, and I know for me here, by the time I'm winding down with my tarpon season, like I cannot wait to get to Alaska. And I feel like that helps me get through, like my tarpon season and maintain a positive attitude, knowing that, I'm going to Alaska in a couple weeks,
Yeah.
and so that's been huge for my career and just, like staying in the love of the game.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. I mean, even just in Florida, for me, it was getting a bay boat, getting out of the skiff after just fly fishing for tarpon every day for a long time, and
Yeah.
then saying, you know what, I'm gonna get in the bay boat after this, and we're gonna run around and find new stuff and do different things, and load up the live well with bait, and like we're gonna catch some fish, like
Yeah.
even if they're snappers or whatever. But that change was big for me. I mean, I think you need some kind of change, whether it's a change of scenery or a vacation or getting a different boat or try offshore fishing for a while or something. I don't know. It made a difference to me. What you said that you and your wife are trying to do some different things, and like what's on your bucket list? What kind of things have you done in these 3 months that you set aside for that? Like, what do you guys like to do?
We've been on a Costa Rica kick these last couple of years. Last year we actually got married down in Costa Rica, and
Nice.
then
Congratulations.
we stuck around. We ended up spending 5 or 6 weeks down there. The year before we spent 2 months, January and February, and planning on going back this year. And that's
What do you do down there?
do a lot of fishing, do
Yeah.
a lot of relaxing, a lot of photography. Just hanging out, man. Just spending time with my wife and my dogs, and just living.
And have you found a good place that you continue to go back to, or are you still exploring down there?
A little bit of both. So like this next trip coming up, we'll hit a couple of our favorite spots, and then we want to go check out the Caribbean side, which we haven't been to before. But yeah, God willing, that's the plan.
Mm-hmm. Which side has the good surfing?
The surfing would be Pacific side.
Yeah. I've heard really good things about the surfing down there, and cool little
Good.
towns you can go
Yeah,
to and just hang out and surf.
yeah,
Seems
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, if you're into surfing, man, that looks like paradise. I am not a surfer or any kind of board sport guy, but yeah, I was out there on the boogie board catching some waves and getting yelled at by the surfers. But
Well, I mean, I'm not a surfer either, but I went to Hawaii and I surfed with my boys. We got a guide, which I thought was kind of cool, getting a surf guide, because a surf guide acts a lot like a fishing guide. And if you get a really good
yep,
one, man, your day is so much better. And he
yep,
puts you in exactly the right spot. And if somebody starts to horn in on you, he goes over there and takes care of it. If the locals are like, I mean, locals are cool with it. Like if you're with him, everything's all right, right? So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
there's no problem. He puts you in exactly the right spot. He even pushes your board if you need to. But when you don't know surfing and you're 100 yards outside of the right spot, you catch
Yep,
nothing, and
yep,
it's a frustrating experience. And
yep,
to be with somebody who really knows it well, uh, really was a great enhancement to the day. And I as a guide myself, I was like, I see what this guy's doing, and it takes a lot of skill, and it takes, this is like, he's a full on professional at this,
hmm,
and he's in Hawaii. Probably could do this most days of the year if he wants to, and then all he wants to do is go surf the big waves later. Like what we were
yep,
doing was, I was like catching, pinfish, uh,
yep,
and all he wanted
yep,
to do is go catch tarpon. It's like, that's cool. We're happy catching pinfish, but I did it with my boys, and then I did it with my daughter on a separate trip to Hawaii. And what I liked about the Hawaii waves is that you could, like, he would check you out, and if you were pretty good, then he'd be like, oh, let's move down the beach a little bit, and then he'd find a little bit different wave, and if you were capable of doing that, then he put you on exactly the wave that you needed. and
yep,
and some of those waves would go so far. Like the Pacific was different. Like the power of the ocean felt different than on the East Coast. I
big
don't know.
time,
I don't know what
big time.
I don't know why that is or whatever, but it just feels more powerful, even for a little 2 foot wave. Like
Yep,
you're getting pulled out, and it seems like on the East Coast, the power of the wave is like powerful, but short period. Like it wants to rip your feet out from under you, but then it's over.
yep.
And then out there in Hawaii, where I've never been to, well, never surfed in Costa Rica. I've been to Costa Rica for fishing, but man, it's incredible. But just to be out there is pretty awesome. What kind of fishing are you doing in Costa Rica?
Dude, I did everything from, blue water offshore fishing to rainbow trout fishing.
Rainbow
So
trout. That's
rainbow trout, yeah,
awesome. What kind of
yeah.
situation is that? Are those stocked fish?
Stocked fish from I think the 1940s, and it
Really?
was something that this was a couple years ago before we were making the big trip down. I saw Fly Lords actually posted a little excerpt on Costa Rica trout fishing, and they didn't mention where it was, but they just mentioned like this place in Costa Rica where you could catch rainbow trout. So that piqued my curiosity. I started doing a little research, figure out where it was, and it was about 5 days before I left. I didn't have time to order any of the stuff I needed, so I went on Amazon. I ordered the Montana Fly Company, beginner's trout box. It gave me like 3 of every fly ever made,
Right.
and I dragged my wife up a little town called San Gerardo de Dota. Write that down if you're going to Costa Rica, you want to do something cool. But yeah, I dragged my wife to that little town. We stayed 3 or 4 nights, and I should have hired a guide, but there was none available. It was kind of a short notice deal. But yeah, we just walked up and down, and that was the thing, is just finding the access points, like where you're legally allowed to go and, not get in trouble. And,
Yeah.
then, but yeah, and that was probably some of the favorite fishing that we did in Costa Rica.
Really? So what does
Yeah,
a
it was
Costa
beautiful.
Rican trout stream look like?
Uh, Looks kind of like how you'd picture it. I mean, the streams are high altitude, so you don't have quite as much of the tropical, what you're thinking of, like coastal vegetation, but
Yeah.
still very lush and beautiful. Birds and monkeys, and the water is like small water, just absolutely gorgeous. And like that's the thing with trout fishing is, a lot of times it's about where you're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, trout live in some beautiful places, and that's one of my favorite things about the species is where you get to fish for them.
That's right, man. And what that is like a spring coming out of the ground, so the temperature can sustain a rainbow trout.
Yeah, you know what? I'd be lying if I tried to say the source of that river, but it is. I mean, I'd be lying if I said the altitude, but I mean it's high enough to where in the morning you want a jacket, in the evening you want a jacket
Okay.
for sure. And the water's probably 55 degrees, somewhere in there,
Wow.
60
That's
degrees.
pretty. Yeah, and enough to sustain them all year long. That's super
Yep.
cool. And would
And
you catch any
they're not big trout. They're
like
all
13,
small,
14
but
inches?
I think the biggest I saw was probably 13 inches.
That's cool.
Yeah,
And they just ate all the beginner flies, nymphs, dry
they
flies,
did. Yeah,
everything.
they really liked that nymph dropper. Yeah, it didn't matter what it was, as long as it was a bead head and
W-
black.
So, are there hatches on those rivers? There, do
Uh,
they
they,
have?
yeah, they do get hatches, and there's just a lot of terrestrial life on the creeks. Did catch a couple on dries, but there wasn't a hatch happening when I was there. Yeah, man, just a really cool fishery to kind of immerse yourself in for a couple days. And,
That's so cool. My
yeah,
son is getting ready to go down to New Zealand, and he's going to spend 2 months there. And
that's a bucket list for me.
me too. I mean, me too. I want to go there real bad. And
Which island is he going to?
well, he's the trip is still kind of materializing, but I think the South. Um, what? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the South Island.
Yeah,
I've never
that's the
been to
island
New
that's supposed to
Zealand.
be like the beautiful, epic trout
Yeah,
fishing. Yeah,
I mean, and I think maybe with 2 months he might get over to both islands and do a little exploring around and stuff. But that's another place that I've just all the pictures that you see and the videos that you see are just that's like definitely bucket list
bucket list, man.
lifetime kind of thing.
Absolutely.
What about the one thing that is interesting about you and you were in this Captains for Clean Water did a movie with you, and I think it's a real interesting perspective to take your experience in Florida and your experience in Alaska and just to kind of get a perspective from you on like the state of the fisheries, water quality, and like where you see us headed and where is there something that can be done, because if a lot of people don't know, there's some fishery issues in Alaska. There was the Pebble mine, which you can tell us all about what was going on up there. And then, of course, we have stuff that we talk about on the podcast a lot with the water issues that we have in Florida. And the state of the fishery in Florida. A lot of people are much more familiar with that. But give us kind of a compare and contrast between the two places and what you've kind of seen in your 14 years of doing that up there.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I've seen both fisheries decline somewhat, the extent of which varies. But the whole Pebble Mine issue for me, it was like I had a chance to, at least use my voice to, you know, fight against this mine, right? And you have, I felt at least like it'd be like being in Florida, and like Lake Okeechobee was never levied up on the south side, and water still flowed naturally. And you had, a farming company coming in and saying, "Hey, we want to stop the flow of water south, levy it up, create all this farmland." Like that would never happen now, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I would at least say I would hope not. So I mean, I wanted to at least like I saw, like down the road, like if Pebble Mine was allowed to be in place, and then you do have a catastrophic failure, what that would do to one of the most pristine areas on the planet was it's just unacceptable, unacceptable. And I mean, we have enough issues going on that we can't really control, or we're trying to figure out how to control them. So being able to stop a pebble mine, or restore the flow of natural water through the Everglades is, to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's we need to do everything we can to protect these wild places. And I mean, like Florida, it's like there's so many water issues going on in Florida. That just seems like one that's like I said, like a no-brainer. Like, why can't we just send the water south back like the way it's supposed to go?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What
yeah.
what have you seen as like in the two different places and the effectiveness of different strategies of getting involved? What have you seen has been the most well, first of all, I'd also like to for you to kind of bring us up to speed on the Pebble Mine and what's going on with that, what happened with it.
So the Pebble Mine's permit for mining was denied, and the EPA provided, they redid the Clean Water Act, saying that, basically, long story short, in 2023, the EPA ruled that, mining was never going to happen in Bristol Bay because of mining waste and the damage to the environment. Da, 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 da. Well, this last summer, the governor of Alaska sued the EPA, saying that they had no right to basically make that ruling. So as it stands now, state of Alaska is suing the EPA, but mine is the permit is still denied.
Great. And so do you think that that action of denying that permit was influenced by anglers and outdoors people and their voices and people getting involved?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, definitely, that was a lot of fuel to the fire, for fighting the Pebble Mine is just, raising public awareness. And, like a lot of people that they didn't know what Pebble Mine was. I mean, like when I first got to Alaska, I remember seeing the stickers for Pebble Mine. Kind of weird, like who wants to mine pebbles, So I mean, like just bringing awareness to the issue and getting people involved. I think that's one of the biggest tools that we have to use in the fight, is just gaining, getting people behind the movement, making them aware of the issues, and then letting them apply pressure.
Mm-hmm. And when you see the effectiveness of what happened in Alaska, and then the effectiveness of like Captains for Clean Water and what we've been able to accomplish there, what kind of comparisons can you draw? Are there anything that we can learn from what happened in Alaska that we could apply to Florida or vice versa?
Uh, and, and I mean, with Alaska, it's encouraging to see, you know, something so detrimental to the environment get stopped, right? Like you always think that like, money always wins, right? Like money's always going to prevail, and, the environmentalist issues, are always going to lose to, corporate interests. And it was very energizing to see that get reversed. I mean, this is a situation where, I mean, you have the largest gold deposit in the world, and uh, environmental interests prevailed,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that is that's very encouraging. It's something that I wish we could really change that tide in Florida, where it's still, like our water issues that we're fighting for, like the biggest proponent to those is the sugar industry, right? And so it's still like, the climate is changing, but it still feels like, you're the underdog in a massive fight.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, well, we are the underdog in a massive fight, and money a lot of times, more times than not, does win. And in
Yep.
this situation, the sugar industry is about as big a money as there is.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think that Captains for Clean Water and many other groups are doing a great job of trying to bring awareness to the issues and get people involved. Um, but I don't know. It is a big fight, and sometimes I notice that the momentum is dropping off, like, a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Especially when things are good or
Yeah, big time.
something else happens, like a hurricane or something else that needs even more immediate attention, like the one
Yep.
that you had in Fort Myers not very long ago was a incredibly serious storm, and that place was. I mean, that the last time I saw you in person was at that Captains for Clean Water event
Yep.
right there, and I drove all through there, and it was rough,
Yep.
as bad as any hurricane I've seen, including
Yep.
Katrina in Louisiana. It was really, really bad. And when something like that happens, and there's something more immediate that needs attention, it seems like maybe we lose a little momentum on the water fight, and maybe that's perfectly acceptable because that's what needs to happen. Like, that's where our attention needs to go. But
Yeah, it's
how,
exactly right though. I mean, with us, like anytime we have a little drought in our rainy season and the water starts to clean up, like there goes the bulk of the public pressure, is like, oh, well, like water's fine now. Like, what are we fixing? Like
yeah.
we, we need to understand that the problem still persists. And until we get a solution to that problem, you're always going to have the potential for those water quality issues.
Well, I mean, don't you think that there already is a solution out there, like with the Okeechobee, and the things that, I mean, that's one of the things that got me more interested in becoming involved with Captains for Clean Water, was because they explained to me, like, well, the solutions have already been voted on. There's money, there's everything. We just need to bring awareness to this and make sure that these things happen.
Hmm.
And they've been slow to happen, but I mean, we've made some big strides, but certainly still a long way from fixing the problem, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of
And
things to undo,
yeah.
before you can fix anything.
Yeah, and so that was something that, like seeing all the stuff that we have to undo to fix our problems, right? Like you take the pebble mine in Alaska, like, hey, you guys can prevent all this mitigation by just, stopping the problem right now. Like no pebble mine, not here, not now, not ever. So yeah, I mean, we have a long road to go in Florida. But the climate has definitely changed, and thanks to groups like Captains for Clean Water, applying pressure and promoting awareness, I feel like we have a voice in the fight now, and like, we're able to make some noise. And it's just, Florida has more issues than just Lake Okeechobee and Everglades restoration. I mean, it's kind of disheartening for me. Like, when I get back from Alaska, I've only been gone 4 months, but driving to the ramp and it's like, oh, there's another community they're putting up over there. Like, oh, they just destroyed that whole piece of land to put in a shopping center. Like, at what point does that stop? I mean, we already have, just like, water quality issues from localized factors in your fertilizer and your septic tank runoff and just outdated systems. And it's just, like you see just not more development, more development. It's just, where do we draw the line there?
I don't know. And then more people moving in every single day. Like, Florida is, people want to live there, you know?
Yeah.
Not just retirees, but people from other states that don't like the way that they're being managed, and it's like there are tons of people coming in. So that is the big question, is
Yeah.
where does it stop, and how do you How do you protect the things that people are moving there for? Like that's why people want to live there, not just because it's nice and sunny all the time, but because the beaches are beautiful, the water's clean, tons of birds, fishing's great. Like,
Yeah,
but you may not even be interested in fishing, but still the water quality affects everyone. Like if you want to take a walk on the beach, you don't want to do that during red tide when everything's dead and washing up on the beach. Nobody enjoys that. So like it applies to everybody, and
yeah,
and that's where when things are good, I think that reminder still needs to be out there, just like you were saying. Is like, man, yeah, it's good right now, but we
yeah,
need to
yeah.
we need to
Need to keep your foot on the gas. Even when the water's clean, like you just got to realize, like the water's, it's not clean because of some big changes that have happened. It's clean because we're in a drought, and there hasn't been a lot of rain for them to have to let out of the lake. So it's, yeah, just keeping your foot on the gas. And just like you said, when times are good, you got to stay on it.
right. How about the hurricane recovery in your area? How's that going? Do you think?
Man, I mean, they've done it. It's amazing the job they have done up until this point. Unbelievable amount of work that's been done. But there's still an unbelievable amount of work that needs to be done. I was on Fort Myers Beach the other day, and I was just driving around for to say, yeah, how long till Fort Myers Beach is back to normal? I'd say 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
And so like that's a long time. That's a long time. The same goes for any of the coastal communities that were hard hit. Sanibel, Pine Island, Mount Lachey. Like they took a hard beating, and it's a long road to recovery. But recovery is underway. It's just understanding that it's going to take quite some time to get things back to what they were.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it we're so fortunate that we have the the facilities and the equipment and the people and the money to clean up like what has happened, because like when you go to the Bahamas and you go there and you're like, huh, there's a whole bunch of just dilapidated things that look like they were once nice. It's like, when did that happen? It's like, oh, that was the storm 15 years ago. It's
Yeah,
like, huh,
yeah,
and you sometimes you take for granted, like, you say what you want about FEMA, and I'm sure they don't do everything right, but man, that's a hell of a resource to,
absolutely,
and we've seen it
absolutely.
in the Keys, after Irma, just these mountains of trash that could have easily just stayed there, right? Like,
Yeah,
but sooner or later, man, and you go for a long time and you're just like, man, they just seem to be moving this mountain of trash over there. And then there's that mountain of trash. But then, sooner or later you're just like, huh, that whole thing's gone. Now it
yeah,
looks a little better. And, you just patience, I guess, but it is kind of, I don't know, it's incredible what a storm like that, what kind of devastation it can do.
yeah. I mean, I remember being on the water a couple of days after the storm hit, and then just looking around at like every mangrove island, every shoreline, literally like top of the trees where the water line was is just trash. Like literally every island, every shoreline, trash. I remember looking at it being like, like this is going to be an issue for the next 10 to 15 years. Where you're going to be fishing shorelines that still have trash from Ian, and I can't believe like that crew, thanks to FEMA. I mean, it's pretty damn clean, those shorelines now. Like unbelievable amount of work that went into that, and just all the beaches, the islands, the cleanup effort in general was unbelievable.
Yeah. And did you think that the fishing recovered pretty quickly after that storm, or what happened in that area, in your area, after that big storm?
Uh, right after the storm hit, it knocked out the causeway. So, my day-to-day operations were just getting people to and from Sanibel, and helping out in any regard, in any way, shape, or form that I could in that way. So I didn't get to like, initially fish right after the storm. But you could tell that it was a huge mixing event, like the water was turned up. There was a lot of stuff in the water that shouldn't have been in the water. Um, so I would say the initial impacts were negative, but then, just the lack of people on the water and the lack of pressure, kind of, it enabled for some really cool fishing scenarios that I hadn't seen play out in, since I was a kid,
Hmm.
which was which is cool to see, pros and cons to both. But, I would think if we didn't, like a hurricane naturally, minus the, human development, I would think that would be a good, it's a good thing for the fishery, right? I mean, clean up the bottom, pull some of that water out of the bay is just a, like a little refresh. But,
Yeah.
our issue was, the storm came in and then it's mixing, all the human waste and trash and everything into so.
Plus, then they have to have a release a lot of water out of Okeechobee too. That
Yeah.
if we get a ton of rain, even on the other side of the state, that water's coming your way, and
Yeah.
that can cause even more issues. But all in all, I think that the improvement sounds like it's going in the right direction, and
Absolutely.
I wish all the people in all of those areas the best, man. It's tough. You don't want to wish it on anybody, especially after going through it yourself several times in the Keys.
Yeah.
It's rough, man. It's a rough deal, but I'm glad to see things are on the improvement side
Yeah.
rather than the other way.
Yeah.
When we used to fish with your dad, we would have a terrible weather, a front come in or something, and we're looking at the weather and we're like, man, we're going to have to head for the barn. There was always this threat of a pancake eating contest that you and I were supposed to have. And we've never gotten there. We've never gotten to this pancake eating contest, but your dad,
been talked about for a long time.
it has been, and your dad assured me with 100% certainty that there was no possible way that I could eat more pancakes than you, and you were really only 10 or 11 years old. And
no way. I was just my dad being my dad. Like I was never never like a killer pancake eater, but I was a little fat kid. Like that's probably what he was thinking about. Yeah.
We were supposed to
I'll
have
tell
it.
you, like as confident as you are in the pancake eating contest, like I know I don't stand a chance. It would be fun.
I love pancakes. It's one of my favorite foods.
Yep.
So one of these days we're gonna get to it, and
Deal.
hopefully it won't be when I finally get to go fishing with you on down here, and we have a bad weather day and we end up having a pancake eating contest. But that would be okay. It's long overdue. I want your dad to be there though when I take you down.
All right.
I'm no Joey Chestnut, but I can eat I can eat maybe two full stacks of really nice pancakes. So anyway, John, it's been awesome catching up with you. Why don't you, if you could, how would people fish with you if they wanted to? I don't know if you even have any time available, but you always got to keep it out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, anybody that wants to get in touch with me, my Instagram at sportfisha, in Alaska would be at Angler's Alibi. I run both of those pages. So, send me a message there. My cell phone, like you said, call or text, 239-222-4265.
Man, some of the footage that you're getting on your Sport Fisha Instagram, you should definitely follow both of those, Angler's Alibi and Sport Fisha, because John is getting incredible stuff of bears, of moose, of incredible stuff, and some of that's drone, I guess, or like some of the stuff I see is drone footage, and it's incredible what you're getting up there. It's just
thank you very much. Yeah, it's an easy Alaska makes an amateur photographer look like a pro. So
well, you got to have the good models, and you definitely do up there. How many like in the area that you're fishing, do you see a lot of bears on a daily basis, or I know there's some parts of Alaska where it's like you're going to see lots of bears every day. Like what's the bear situation where you are? Is it a lot of bears every day, or kind of some a week?
So early in the season when sockeyes come in the river, it's definitely a daily, you're going to see multiple bears daily. And then that kind of, like once the sockeyes move through the system and get up to the streams where they're going to spawn, a majority of the bears follow the salmon. But there are bears that stick around for the other species, your chums, pinks, and silvers. And we expect to see bears every day, but the volume of which changes throughout the season. But then as the season goes on, we do flyouts up to those streams where the sockeye are spawning. Like that's we go in there and fish for rainbow trout. And we were at one of our streams this past year, and I remember sitting on the bluff and counted 38 bears just in the
Wow.
body of water that I could see that we would be fishing. 38.
Wow. And then you just go on in there?
Yeah, man, it's literally like fishing inside the cage at the zoo. It really
Dang.
is. Yeah, like I had a
Dang.
guy this year. We're sitting down this where we saw all those bears, and he looks at me and goes, "Landry, like, are we allowed to go down there?" And I was like, "Well, you are now, but I could see it probably 25 years from now where they put a stop to it." But yeah,
Wow. And
it's
that
amazing.
seems to be something like when you're really green and just starting out, that seems to be something that would have been kind of difficult to get used to. Uh,
Big time, big
and
time. Yep.
how do you gain that experience and you just have enough encounters to where you kind of start to understand them as we would understand a
Yeah,
tarpon or something
absolutely.
else, like you just kind
Yep.
of you see their behavior and like
Yep.
we're not getting anywhere close to that one. This one over
Yep.
here is okay, but that one,
Yep.
no. uh
Absolutely.
have you had some interesting encounters?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of interesting encounters. I've never had an encounter where I was truly like scared for my safety or the safety of the clients that I had with me. But like any time when you're fishing in that proximity to so many bears, like you're gonna have stories for sure. Yeah, I've like I said, nothing deadly or like scary, but like been close to a lot of bears for sure.
Man, I'll tell you what, a grizzly bear, and especially one up there, which are larger than the ones that we have in Montana. And man, I mean, ultimate respect for that animal. Like,
Yeah,
just,
what you need to understand though is that because of the salmon, it's a totally different animal and how it interacts with you and how you interact with it, right? I
yes,
mean, I remember doing a trip out to Montana or Wyoming when I was a little kid, and like the bears, were definitely a threat to your day. Like you saw a bear, it wasn't a good thing.
mm-hmm.
It was a serious situation, and because of the lack of food, right? Out in Alaska, the salmon run is so prolific that, like the bears don't view you as a food source. Like you can put yourself in a situation where like that bear could view you as a competition for his food source, but,
Yes.
like bear's not going to see you and like, be, dying of hunger and like, oh, I need to go eat that fisherman, so it really creates a unique environment for you to interact with, these huge animals that could rip you apart in a second.
Yes.
Uh, it's pretty special, and I think it's probably one of my favorite things about fishing in Alaska. It's just like that relationship you get to build with the bears, and really cool.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I'd love to come up there and fish with you. What is the what's the status of that lodge? I mean, do you take new customers up there, or is it booked out years in advance, or what's the deal?
It's booked out. I'd say about depending on the weeks when you want to come. Like you're booking about 2 years out. But you know how it is. There's always guys that have to drop out for one reason or the other, and so it's always worth a phone call if you're interested, and get yourself on a list for this year, or get yourself a spot for next year. But
What's the
we're a small lodge. We take 12 guests a week.
Yeah, that's what I
Um,
was going to ask. What the capacity of the lodge was,
yeah,
and then you have flyouts right from the lodge out
yeah,
to wherever you're going to go.
yeah.
And are those float planes or wheel planes?
Float planes,
And they
float
land
planes.
on the river, or you land right on the river?
It depends. A lot of the times when we're flying out to these small streams, like the streams are too small to accommodate a float plane, so
Right.
you're landing in like a little pothole lake, that's somewhat like you have a mile or two hike to get to the river, but you're landing in like a little tundra pothole, basically.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
that's cool, man. Those pilots up there are
yeah,
serious. I mean,
yeah.
when I did a little fly out deal one time in Alaska, and the pilot was like, "Oh man, I forgot my wallet," and I was like, "Okay," and he's like, "We're gonna stop by my house," and we landed. He had like a little pothole in front of his house that he kept the airplane on, And man, I mean, we started going in there, and I was like, "That's your house, and we're gonna land this on that little drip of water." Like he's like, "Oh yeah, every day." And okay, and sure enough, man, he dropped that thing in there and landed, pulled up, runs inside, grabs whatever he needed, and then here we go out of there. I didn't think that there was enough room for us to take off on that thing. Those guys are seriously legit. Those pilots up there,
they're legit.
Yeah,
they're true
weather,
professionals.
like no matter what the weather, I'm sure as a true professional, they're also going to call it when it's not something that they need to be doing. But man, I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And that's the cool thing is like, that's how they deliver the mail. That's how they like everything. Is float plane. So like as comfortable as you would be as a Uber driver in New York, I guess that's how they are in in that float plane. It's just every day they get in that thing, and that's what they do. Just deliver stuff everywhere. Delivering mail, delivering everything. Just incredible. I mean that part, just like you're talking about the bears are one of your favorite parts about Alaska. It's like, or certain types of hunting. Like I like to watch the dogs as much as I like to actually hunt the birds or anything. It's like it's almost the same kind of experience of I like to watch these float plane pilots as much as I like to fish.
Absolutely.
Like it's pretty cool. All right, man. Well, it's been awesome catching up with you. We will have our pancake eating contest. I don't like anything in my pancakes if you're going to make them. I don't like blueberries
I'm the same way.
Yeah,
don't put any chocolate chips in there.
It's already good. Why do you want to put something better in it? The pancakes are already awesome. So we're good with that. We'll have plain pancakes and lots of them. All right, John, it's been awesome catching up with you. Please tell your dad I said hello and wish him my best. And we'll catch up with you soon, hopefully on the boat together one of these days.
Sounds good, Tom. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Thanks, John. See ya.